Know You Core and Extend. Use the code Clydesdale to get 20% off at checkout at c4energy.com. On Clydesdale Media, where we bring you the widest array of content here on our YouTube channel. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. Hit that notifier so you're the first to know when new episodes are available. What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Clydesdale Media Podcast. My name is Scott Switzer. I'm the Clydesdale, and I am so honored and privileged to have with me today Austin Malleolo. How's it going, Austin?
How's it going? The honor is mine. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I'm a big timeline guy. And let me first introduce you. If people don't know, you are an OG legend, 8-time CrossFit Games athlete, CrossFit seminar staff level, and you're a level 4. You've been seminar staff since 2010. And now you are the general manager of affiliates, I think is your title.
Yeah. So actually my official title now is, of operations and acquisition and strategy for affiliates. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but it adds to the mouthful of stuff. So yeah, just of being a part of CrossFit for a very long time.
Yeah. And with your rapid climb in the last couple years, like you have to update LinkedIn, you have to update Instagram, you have to that's got to be a process in of itself.
It's funny you say that. I think it's obviously that's not front of mind. I don't often think of that until, someone that I don't know, a lot of people reach out from different avenues and, they reference whatever is on said platform. I'm like, oh, I should probably update that. Or, I often get reminded by that perspective. So it's definitely a new world where, even 5 years ago, that's not something that you thought too much about, but we're in the day and age of communication where a lot of people, if you're on those platforms, will reach out. So it's important to make sure that the information's up to date. So, if they're looking, to reach out on a specific topic, it's relevant, but it definitely adds to the complexity of the world we live in nonetheless.
Yeah. What's fun for me is a lot of people forget to update that stuff or forget what they've put there. And then as a podcaster, I can research, find this tidbit they left in 2015, forgot all about, bring it up and how did you know that about me? And
Right.
So it makes it fun, but I can only imagine. I don't even think I've updated my LinkedIn in years.
Yeah, LinkedIn's a unique place. It's something that, but I get a lot of inbound on there now, and and so I don't know if that means I'm just getting older or if the platform's getting bigger. I'm not really sure, but so it's which I need to. It is due for an update now that you say that. So you've given me a good weekend project.
There you go. So I'm a big timeline guy. So I want to build a timeline just about your history and what got you to where we are today, and then hit on kind of the future and where we're going with affiliates and CrossFit. So you found CrossFit early on, back in late 2000s, however we delineate
That's
that.
right.
And you were a personal trainer that just was kind of, someone said, hey, try this. Do you want to fill us in on that story a little bit?
Yeah, I think for a lot of us that found CrossFit in its early years, it was word of mouth, right? Because CrossFit.com was really one of the only places you'd hear about CrossFit. There wasn't many affiliates back then, so oftentimes there was someone that had heard about it that had experienced CrossFit, whether they did a workout or they knew someone that did. And so that was me. So I was at a traditional gym, personal training, and there's a trainer at the gym, and if, for those of you that had at personal trained in traditional gyms or currently do, there's always one veteran trainer. It's been around, seems like forever. They train all they have the unique clients and the stories, and they're the mentor, right? The unofficial mentor of the gym space. And Eric was his name. I'll never forget it. And he was like, you got to try this CrossFit thing. And I was like, what is that? I had no idea. He's like, well, they kind of explain the workouts, and they have this workout called Fran, and I'm like, well, what's that? And he explained it, and I was like, oh, Now I was just a classic meathead at the time, where, and he explained 95-pound thrusters, like 95 pounds, that's light, just kind of scoffing at the rep scheme and the loading. But I did it, and it floored me, put me on my back. I'm sure none of my reps counted, but nonetheless, it gave me a dose that it left me questioning my current fitness regimen, but also sort of much more inquisitive of what this CrossFit thing is, and so that raised my eyebrow, and really, then I started to dig in, went to CrossFit.com, and you know had the classic probably 1 month transition phase of still doing what I was doing, but like, dabbling on CrossFit.com, not knowing I was doing CrossFit workouts, but I'm sure, and I know not I wasn't really doing anything correctly, but doing them enough to get a stimulus and therefore an adaptation. So that's really how I found out, and then really dove into CrossFit.com, the CrossFit Journal, learned about the courses that were offered. Just which was, I think, for many of us early on, that was the route. A workout, put you on your back, and then resist a little bit because no one likes being put on their back, right? Your ego gets checked a little bit, and then from there, sort of, in the off hours when no one's looking, you really start to learn about it, and then you realize it's pretty cool, and then go all in.
So I've heard you say a couple of times that you were addicted to Every Second Counts. And what's funny is my buddy Charlie and I, we just did a review of our top 5 all-time favorite CrossFit documentaries.
Hmm.
And that one was number 1 on my list,
Mm.
because what's funny is you go into that focusing on this group of guys and none of them end up winning. The winner comes out of nowhere
Right.
and kind of shocks the whole world. And it was just a raw look at like the beginnings of CrossFit. So what attracted you to that documentary?
Gosh. Well, you know, a few things, and it's funny there. It's actually, I think, like on my shelf behind me here. Like I not only bought the DVD, but I also like you could buy the programs from the CrossFit Games. So so when I learned about CrossFit, I learned about it from a selfish perspective, which was just my fitness. Well, I was not in the beginning at all thinking about how I could train people or anything at all. It's like, oh, this is something I can do. And then I was like, "Oh, there's this competitive aspect to it." So then I started to dig into it, and I bought the I think the 2008, it's like a guide, right? It's sort of, and it had like an athlete's picture, and then it had their stats. And so that's how I started to train. I was like, I'll just do these workouts and try to beat the times listed next to the best people. So I literally went around, circled the best times of the best athletes. I was like, I got to beat them. And then there's a documentary. I was like, well, I got to learn about this, right? So I bought the documentary. That was why I got it. And then I started watching it, and I do have a bit of a personality of all in, right? So it's my if I decide to go in on something, the bar is relatively low in the sense of like, okay, now I'm just going to watch it all the time. But there's so many intriguing aspects to that. One, the fact that the cast of characters were so diverse, of different people, different backgrounds, um, and they were all had like really like different specialties, different niches, right? Um, Obviously, it's my favorite, someone that resonated with me a lot, and someone I'm friends with now is Josh Everett, and just that that story was really cool, and just kind of what he was doing and how he was training. The Olympic lifting thing was really interesting to me, which obviously something that he spoke about, um, and and but also, you had the understanding, and there's a couple interviews in there that always stick with me. The one with Greg, and he was getting interviewed somewhere about why this was happening, and what the goal is. And I'll just never forget that statement of like, we want to learn what's happening. And if you come here and you tell us, you have an athlete and you tell us all your members have muscle ups at your gym, we want to know what you're doing. We want to learn about that. And he talks about how egalitarian CrossFit is, and the nature of learning from the best, and that's what kind of bringing everyone together is to identify, is something happening in these gyms that we should be learning and then disseminating to other gyms. And those things really stuck with me, because it was, yes, it was this competition aspect, but it was also it was a really good glimpse inside the machine. And back then there wasn't a lot of that. I think now we're a little spoiled because there's so much media from all over, where that was really it. The videos on .com were, you know, of like a grainy little video of someone just doing air squats to death metal, which is awesome, but there wasn't a lot of that the material at that time. So um, much to my wife's dismay, we did watch that a lot. It was either that or we were watching, our the Friends reruns because that was her favorite. So that was our entertainment, early on.
So Alexis Detroit says the deadlift
Mm,
king,
mm.
and she should know because she's married to the deadlift queen, which is
Oh
Carolyn
yeah.
Prevost.
Oh well, yes, and I think the last time I had the opportunity to deadlift in the same vicinity was in 2019 at the Arnold Classic, or like it was when they did the first record breakers, like when the world was about to shut down, if I'm not mistaken. That was fun. That was a good time. Very surreal because we actually, when we were at that event, there were no fans. They only had athletes at that time. It was like they went back and forth between canceling it, and so it was just an empty, massive, expo hall with a bunch of maniacs deadlifting for 2 minutes.
Yeah, I was at the Arnold that year. I was judging the
Yeah.
CrossFit competition. So
Okay.
I was a few people allowed in other than the athletes because I was judging. It was, and I live in Columbus, so I've been to the Arnold a million times. It was so eerie being there with no fans.
Yeah. And it's funny because when I think back of it, and and I think I've been to the Arnold once after. I mean, just everything's so packed, right? Like I mean, it's shoulder to shoulder, and there's just nothing. It was very, very surreal. But what was cool about that, not to get too off topic, was the the strongmen were there and the competitors alongside of some of us CrossFitters. And since there was no one there, it was a very intimate environment. Everyone's guards were down, right? Because when there's a lot of people there, there's a lot more. You have to be a little more aware. You have to be mindful of where you are, so on and so forth. But we could just walk anywhere. I remember just sitting next to Thor and just chatting with him, and just and trying not to feel like very insignificant because he's 7 times the size of me. But those types of things were like, normally that doesn't happen because you're being whisked away and doing different things. So that was a very unique moment, but surreal nonetheless.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I'll never forget it. I actually haven't even been back since, and I live right here in Columbus. That
Right.
was kind of because I worked security there for 5 years probably before that. Um, and it's a lot. It's a lot to take in all at once. So back to you. So one thing I want to kind of use against you is your own words. I was at the
Mm,
Midwest affiliate gathering,
mm,
and and you made this phrase that like we find CrossFit, we fall in love with it, we want to share it, so we want to become a coach. We get our L1, we start coaching, we fall in love with it more, and then we want to own an affiliate.
mm.
And that is the trajectory of your life. You fell in love with it. Only you just add the competitive piece in there as well. But so how long did it take you to fall in love with it and want to be a coach?
Yeah. So it's a great question, and so I was a personal trainer. So I think there was this I went to school for exercise science, and I was personal training when I found CrossFit. And I think for certainly a lot of us that had that route, not everyone has that, but some have that. Is I knew I loved that aspect of it. Was always rooted in working hard and fitness. Where as an athlete growing up, I was never, I played sports, but I was never the good athlete. But I was never gifted. I just knew I had to work hard, and my dad taught me that at a younger age. And went to school for exercise science. And as I went through that that journey, it was somewhat underwhelming, right? Going to school for all that, and it was, you know, there wasn't a lot there, right? And but so personal training was just one of those things you do, but I didn't really have a thought process of what was next. There was no real like, what do you do after you personal train for some time? So when I found CrossFit, again, I found it from a competitive angle to start, right? I was like all in on that. And the first step was at that time, I need to go get my level one because if I'm going to compete, I need to learn about CrossFit. It just seemed logical to me. The thought process wasn't more than if I want to compete at CrossFit, I need to go to learn from CrossFit, right? Which in hindsight made a lot of sense. And, little things, because I just didn't know what like movements were, like Sumidal of high pull. Never heard about that before, rowing. And there was all these things that I just had never done. And yet they were so, integrated into the CrossFit workouts and the ecosystem. And again, keep at that point, there wasn't a lot of content or media around the methodology. Like now you can get a lot of it out there to really whet your palate if you want. So I went to my level one, and that sparked the fire like many. I was like, wow, this is so not only for me, from an athletic perspective, but then from a methodology perspective, from a community perspective, I was like, this is really cool, right? This is something from a training piece. So I started to integrate it into my personal training. Basically, started training people with the CrossFit methodology. And then I quickly that's when I really dug, then I started reading every CrossFit Journal article at that time. I literally printed them out. I actually still have them in my lower bookshelf. Like a maniac, I decided to print them and laminate the pages. Don't do that anymore, because it would be very not cost effective and not good for anything. But back then you could. I think it was once a month, or at the time the articles were coming out. So I was print them and read them. Um, and so then I was like, all right, well, I got to try to find an affiliate, because this is, if I'm going to do CrossFit, I'm going to try to find one. There was not many around, but I remember dropping into my first CrossFit affiliate, which was, I think it was CrossFit Saratoga, if I'm not mistaken, um, and just outside of Albany in Boston Spa. And it was a garage in a neighborhood. And I just remember driving down that road, and I was like, oh, this is not right. This is a neighborhood. This is not where a gym would be. And it was also like a weekend, so it was like Saturday or Sunday morning at like 7 AM. So I'm like, "Man, people are gonna think I'm the weirdo driving down this road to a cul-de-sac." I'll never forget that. And so I'm driving real slow, no idea where I am, and I'm like, I see a tire back there. I'm like, it's a neighborhood where you just don't see a gigantic tire, in a driveway. So I'm like, "All right, I think this is it." Get out of my car, walk like creepily down the driveway, because I'm like, "This is the address." Sure enough, the two, the two garage doors are open. There's some music playing, a rope hanging down from the ceiling, and some pull-up bars, on the wall. And I was like, "This is it." And I did the filthy 50 there, and I was like, "This is awesome," you know. And I just, it was I just I believe it was Susan and Chris, and they had their family inside, making breakfast for their kid, and it was just a whole experience. And I just remember that moment. Then subsequently went to drop into more affiliates and train at more affiliates, but obviously it's very different than a traditional gym, right? Very different experience. Um, so that and that was just a tradition. I think that journey was at that time very similar for many people's. You start to get your feet wet into the community, you jump in and you realize it's something different, and then you get intoxicated, rightfully so, by the results and the efficacy of the program, right? I think that's another thing, is it was, I'd been working out very consistently for a long time, do CrossFit for 5 or 6 months, and it just earth shattering, the adaptation that happens. So there's that alongside of this very, and at that time, it's very counterculture, um, very unique. No one else was talking about this type of stuff. So it was a perfect storm back then, certainly for me, where I'll never forget, someone asked me a question. I think it was towards the end of my college career. And someone's like, why do you work out? Because I wasn't an athlete, like they're like, what's the purpose behind you working out so much? Because I did love working out. And I thought it was a very interesting question, because I didn't have an answer at that time in my life. Right? Was it just for vanity? Was it just because I've always worked out when I was playing sports? But man, it really, and I remember at that time, obviously, like you don't articulate challenges to anyone, you just sort of internalize. But now I look back and I think, man, like that was, and then what CrossFit did was it gave me a purpose. It gave me something to chase, performance, and I don't have this movement, I don't have this skill. I need my time to go down, or my lift to go up, and it gave me something to pursue, where oftentimes, specifically when you're out of college, there is not that, right? Chasing anything from an actual physical capability perspective really goes away in our adult life. The beauty of CrossFit is that you have that opportunity to strive for something, And it may be different for everyone, but you walk in, it's maybe your first pull up, hanging from the pull up bar for 10 seconds, or trying to make it to some level of competition. And so that's what really sucked me in, and it made it real sticky. And that's that journey I think a lot of people go through, is that it affects them to a degree that really impacts their life. And then you're like, this is really great. And then maybe it's, hey, I want to train a lot, or I want to work out a lot, so I'm gonna coach at a gym, right? Like, I think it's okay that that's a pathway. Then you realize that there's it can be as impactful, if not, and arguably it is more, to train others, to see those moments, to get their firsts, to get them in the door. So I think that, and you have that feeling. That's also why CrossFit coaches and gyms, it's very rarely do you find, like, excuse my language, like shitty people, right? Because it's you have, you're in service of, and if you are truly in service of other people in this higher purpose, then usually it weeds out the riffraff along the way.
Yeah, it's funny that that story speaks to me so much because my first experience was, um, I was over 500 pounds and my next door neighbor owned a CrossFit affiliate. He worked me out in my garage for a couple months, asked me to come to the gym. I show up, it's a volleyball center. And in basically they shared the space of the workout area in the back of the volleyball center and converted it to a CrossFit gym for a couple hours a day.
Hmm.
And now they're a 10-year affiliate in a like 15,000 square foot facility of their own and
That's right.
doing remarkably well. But I walked in that day and it was the first time in my life I felt like I could be an athlete again.
Hmm.
In that 1 hour, they
That's
flipped
right.
the switch for me to be from a 500-pound guy to someone who could be an athlete again. And it never stopped. It just because every day you go into the gym and there's new things to conquer, new things to win at, and it just gets that athlete mentality back for so many people.
That's right.
And
Yeah,
then and I went and got my L1 and I ended up coaching as well. So, um, so yeah, go ahead.
well, yeah, I think it's that whiteboard is a really powerful tool. It's if harnessed correctly. I think sometimes the whiteboard nowadays gets a little bad rap of, like, competition, or judgment, or things like that. But I think that if really harnessed correctly, like you said, it can be something that is really powerful to chase results and to feel like an athlete and to have purpose. And you know, oftentimes now, like, I work out a lot on my own in the garage at 5 in the morning, but I write my workout on my whiteboard. I put my time down, and it's just even that accountability of having it written down and knowing that you're recording it, starting the clock. Those things, which are outside the CrossFit ecosystem, are somewhat unheard of, right? When you tell someone just to start the clock for a workout, they say, "Well, why?" It's like, well, we got to measure it, right? So those types of things, are so simple, so elegant, yet so important to the program. And as we've gotten bigger, it's easy to look at those things and say, "Oh, they can bring negative," as opposed to, like anything, it's there's there's responsibility, right? When something can yield such powerful results, there's a responsibility to make sure it's applied correctly, because anything can sway in a different direction if it's not channeled correctly.
I agree completely. So at some point, and this is where the timeline gets fuzzy for me,
Mm.
is you either A, get connected with Reebok,
Mhm.
or B, you're opening your own affiliate. I know at one time you had like 4 different affiliates at one time.
Mhm.
What came first, the affiliate or Reebok?
Yeah, so it was Reebok. So I went to the CrossFit Games in 2010, and that was the year they actually signed the deal with. So that was when CrossFit and Reebok signed their deal at the end of that year, and so they were reaching out to athletes to bring onto their roster. And it was sort of, they were building it initially, as they didn't have any athletes, and I had finished at the games, and I believe 2010 I finished sixth, if I'm not mistaken. So had the I well got lucky, And so that's how I got connected. To like, hey, we want to bring you on the roster to be a sponsored athlete, which back then was sort of like just I didn't believe it, right? Like it was just very. I mean, nothing was happening in it. Like for reference, 2010 CrossFit Games, we got a cinch bag, a water bottle, and like a cutoff T-shirt. You know, like that was what athletes got, right? That was the bag. You know, that was the, you know, now obviously we all know whatever all the athletes get. Um, so I got introduced to Reebok from that perspective, and I actually went to their headquarters. You know, and Reebok did such a great job, right? They're used to signing like NFL, but they had a huge NFL roster at the time, and so they're used to this wonderful song and dance. Where, you know, to some young 20-year-old kid that did CrossFit, it was so overwhelming and very cool. But they had just, because of that, they had a warehouse where they kind of just threw some CrossFit equipment. They're like, yeah, we have a coach coming in once in a while to coach, you know, our members. And I remember, I was just like, hey, well, if you ever feel like you need, you know, coaching help or support, let me know. I just kind of threw my name in the hat. I was living in Albany at the time, with my now wife. She was working outside of Albany, so we were there, and I was actually working at Albany CrossFit at Jason Ackerman's gym that he used to own and has since moved on from and sold, but it still exists there. Um, and and so then it is sort of, you know, right time, right place, but also a really good life lesson of just, hey, like if you like when you raise your hand to do something, something may come of it or not. But I remember getting the call like, hey, if you want to come out and coach, we'd like to offer more classes and have it be less of like, you know, just a coach coming in to coach, you know, a morning class. And it was a bit of a risk, right? You know, I was you know, living in you know, in New York, but I decided to, you know, hey, like seems like there's an opportunity here. You know, Reebok's a big brand. Obviously, they had a long deal they signed with CrossFit, so I moved to Boston, and started coaching there full time. So that was how I got, you know. So not only I was an athlete, but I was coaching, and that was in 2000, end of 2010, beginning 2011, and I had also, so that time is when I went. That's when I got on seminar staff as well, right around that same time, and then I opened up, when I started opening up my gyms. My first gym I opened up, so I was managing Reebok CrossFit One. Then we opened up CrossFit One Nation in Needham, I think 2013 or 14, right around there. So that was when I opened up my first affiliate outside of running Reebok CrossFit One.
Very cool. So when does the connection with James and Spencer come?
Mm. So so James, so my connection with James started early in 2010. We competed against each other. Um, you know, in the parking lot in Albany, of you know, of I think it was actually called regionals back then. We had sectionals and regionals, so we competed against each other, and we competed at the games. I don't think we liked each other. It was probably me. James is the nicest person, and I was probably just a jerk. But we did. I remember like we bumped contacts. I don't know if you like, this was like really like there was an app called Bump. How you could like share information. I'll never forget. He's like, "Do you have Bump?" I was like, "No, I don't." And so I had to like download an app to share contacts. I'll never forget that for some reason. Now AirDrop, but back then it was some app. And so we stayed in contact. Oh, and so James and I got like just from being relatively close. You know, he lived in the Mass area, and then so when I moved out, we had the opportunity to train a little bit more together. And then Spencer obviously met him through competing as well, and then so James was always in the Massachusetts area, so we naturally were training a little more. He was at CrossFit New England, so we crossed paths a lot and became closer over time. Spencer actually, um, gosh, I think what happened was he was looking for a coaching job and wanted to come up and work at Reebok CrossFit One. We were looking for to hire coaches, and if I'm not mistaken, he came up and we didn't hire him, and I gave him feedback. I remember, and like about like, you know, how to get better, so on and so forth. And yeah, I hope I'm not messing the story up, but gosh, it feels like so long ago. And he went home and actually like worked on that feedback, worked with other coaches, actually worked with some other people on seminar staff to get, you know, to improve his efficiency and efficacy as a coach. Came back and and did so much better, and then we actually hired him. So then he moved up to Massachusetts to coach at Reebok CrossFit One. So, and I'll never forget that, because now that I look at this, I remember I was really impressed, because back then, again, it was just a much smaller pool of coaches. The community was a little smaller, and he went out and addressed the feedback and got way better. And then got on seminar staff, I think right around that same time as well. James was on seminar staff as well. So we started to develop, so that's how we all got even tighter, because we were all within a similar ecosystem. So we all essentially were coaching and working out together in some way, shape, or form, within the greater Boston area for some time.
And so through all this coaching and affiliate owning, you developed the ham plan, which is a programming for people that they could purchase and follow. How did that come to be? And you said that you and James didn't get along initially, but apparently that changed over time. And again, Spencer jumps in that, and you guys come up with this system. How did that all come to fruition?
Yeah. So yeah, probably yeah. James, I think, has always been and is like the friendliest person in the CrossFit ecosystem. So it's very rare. It's like, oh, we're competitors, and then like 2 days later, it's like, oh no, we're friends. Let's work out. And the ham plan actually came. So Spencer and I started the ham plan early on. Handle and Malleolo. Okay, that's as creative as we got. Okay, that was the ham plan. Um, there's another alternative meaning that's not PG that also worked out well, if you wanted to go down that route. But for all intents and purposes, it was the Handel and Malleolo plan. And really, some of the origin story on it, I think it's funny, is we were both competing at the CrossFit Games, and we are very different athletes. He's very tall, athletic. I'm very short, not athletic. So everyone was like, but we would trade together, and it would baffle a lot of people. Like, well, how do you guys do the same workouts? You couldn't be more different. And we had very different strengths and weaknesses, obviously. Spencer couldn't do one handstand push-up, and I couldn't snatch 10 pounds, right? So that was sort of like, our strengths and weaknesses. So we started to just communicate with athletes in the ecosystem that were looking for support or help. And of course, the vertically challenged group would gravitate towards me, and the taller athletes, bigger athletes, would gravitate towards Spencer. Because back then, in the early, 2012, 13, 14 timeframe, there wasn't a lot. There were only a handful of bigger athletes too. Spencer was the first CrossFit athlete, I believe, to snatch 300 pounds too. So he had to, that was a really big moment, certainly back then. So we started to, like many people at that time, were like, well, we should write programming for athletes, because they're asking for it. And we're doing this, and we could talk about how we talked about targeting and tweaking workouts based off strengths and weaknesses. That's how we would do things. So Spencer and I would work out with each other, but we would tweak based off what we needed to work on. So that's how we started that programming template. And then that evolved to affiliate programming, because over time we would get the questions that well, we don't want to, well, we don't want to take class. We want to follow your programming. And that was fundamentally against what we believed in running an affiliate. And it was one of those, you don't know until you know type of thing. Man, are we pulling athletes out of class because of individual programming? That's not what we want. So we started programming for affiliates and reached out to their affiliates and said, hey, we can do affiliate programming that actually works with competitor programming, so they can take class. That was really important to us at that time, because we were taking class at our affiliate. We were never just on our own plan. We were always a part of the community. If we had extra stuff, we would do it on the side and outside of class. And then along those, and so at that time, we started programming more, and then James came into the fold. I think James was doing some programming too for some people. A lot of people were like, hey, let's do this together. You have a network, we have a network. We want to reach more affiliates. So that's how we all three got connected. We actually brought in a fourth. His name's Travis, who was running one of our locations, our third location, which was the CrossFit Boston location. And so we brought him in too, just to help as we expanded, and because we were expanding pretty quickly, and we were offering more we hit that there was a time where online programming really took off. And so we just needed more infrastructure to help support. We had a lot of affiliates, a lot of individual athletes. So yeah.
So I'm going to fast forward the story because I want to make sure we have enough time for the CrossFit stuff and where we're going with all the affiliate tools and things like that. So Ham gets purchased by CrossFit or
Hmm.
and becomes CAP, which is
Hmm.
CrossFit Affiliate Programming. Do you guys still do the programming for CAP, or has it evolved where CrossFit kind of bought the list and now they're doing it themselves?
Yes, yeah. So we have a programming team at CrossFit now. I'm not on that programming team, but we have a programming team. Spencer still is a part of that. Spencer is a key stakeholder in that, and with a few others as well. As obviously we do more than just CAP programming as well. And then for those that follow CAP affiliates, you also see there's a lot of other familiar faces you see in the videos and those types of things. Because we do a lot of filming and content. So I would say that Spencer's still a part of that, but a larger programming team, which adds to more robust resources and also that, there's also CrossFit.com. There's also other avenues of programming that programming team works on, which is really cool. So programming is a huge aspect, obviously, of what we do at CrossFit, and CAP being sort of the cornerstone for affiliates, but we also have other areas that team supports too.
Awesome. So I believe it's when Dave was CEO briefly, he announced this structure where they're going to name affiliate leaders in different regions around the world to be able to communicate the message of CrossFit. I'm assuming I think you were part of that first group.
I was
No,
not. I was
you were
not.
not.
No.
Ooh, look at you now.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean that's like, so we think about the history of, I mean, that was obviously, it feels like 7,000 years ago at that time. And so and I think if I were to pull back at like the support for affiliates, right? Where we think about where we are now, where we used to be. I mean, historically, there was, we had our team that supported the affiliates just from that transactional perspective. Hey, you're going to sign up, become an affiliate, and then you have your affiliate fee. Then over the time, really, like you saw, as you highlighted, there was start to be a shift of, hey, we need to communicate better with affiliates. How do we do that? We have a lot of affiliates around the world, and we did have some country managers a little prior to that in different countries. A lot of that specifically from the language and the culture and the ability to meet the community where they are was really important in certain areas of the world where we just struggled to communicate, and still do in some senses now, depending on the language barrier. um, and and then so I came on after that. So after the actual acquisition, um, and is when I came into my role, and that was a big shift for me when I went from owning gyms, running Reebok, CrossFit One, and all these other things to actually, I've now moved on from all of those, and I'm full time in CrossFit. And I started out managing the U.S. gym operations side of the house, and really from when I came on to really now, it's there's been a lot of shifts in focus. The first shift initially in that first year of my time was to stabilize. I mean, it was super rocky, as I'm sure you know well, and it just stabilizing with where, the business, the communication, and the trust in the community with CrossFit. There was a lot of change, a lot of transition, and and the communication specifically with affiliates, we had a fragmented community. Because communication wasn't something that had been done a lot of. So we not only had to build trust, but we had to build avenues of trust and communication. Um, and and then had to do a lot of listening to listen of, well, what is the current state of our affiliate ecosystem? And I think we also needed to get past COVID. COVID really obviously crushed our businesses and crushed our affiliates and coaches. And we just had to get through that, right? And what I mean by that is, like, it was survival mode for everybody, including us, of like, hey, like, let's just get to the other side. We were hopeful, and we all, like, in the beginning we're like, when will the other side happen? Then when we realized we were going to get there from just all of the things that made business really tough, we knew that we just had to stabilize from that perspective, and that took a lot of time and energy. Um, and then from there, we've been able to really start to shift to listen. And where are you? What do you need? What do you want? And start to not only that, then really try to get a better understanding of the current state of the ecosystem. Because we have a lot of gyms, we have a lot of affiliates. We're all over the world in 150 countries. So how do we listen and then identify what are the areas and where are the areas that we should be spending our resources? Because we can't do it all. What should we be doing? And then how do we make sure we do it effectively? Um, and so that's really that's sort of that condensed timeline over the last couple of years. But that first year was like, the waters were wild. I mean, for everyone, right? For everyone's business. But thankfully we're really on the other side of that now. And we see that with our businesses, and we see that in just the health of the ecosystem, which is really nice to see.
Yeah, I'm totally off script now, but what I find fascinating is because I'm at a lot of events, I talk to a lot of people at CrossFit HQ,
Mm,
and what I find fascinating and what gives me hope at this point is for years it was like, let's survive, let's get through this, let's look a year ahead.
mm,
Now it seems like we're looking 5 years ahead. Like things have stabilized enough that, hey, we can actually put a plan in place for what's going on. And that's what really lifted me up. Um, Talking to a few executives at semifinals and the
mm,
games, other events that have gone on, and then the Midwest athletic or affiliate gathering. That
mm,
was like I left there pumped, ready to go, and I'm not even an affiliate owner. So I want to ask you this: instead of the negative, what assets does CrossFit have that you can lean into to help the affiliates grow?
yeah. Yeah, it's a great question. And I couldn't agree more with that. Of now having the ability to look like, where do we want to be in 5 years, in 10 years? What's our goal? And the nice thing is aligned incentives. So that's really where we start, right? Having aligned incentives of, our goal is to have CrossFit, the brand, be able to get in front of and reach more people, right? That's the power of the CrossFit brand. So this underlying thing is the methodology. It's the most effective methodology in the world, hands down. We love that. It creates unbelievable results and very sticky communities. And we have 13,000 affiliates around the world, which is amazing. Now, our goal is, how do we reach more people, right? Because we think, and because that needs to permeate down to our gyms, and we want more people walking into our affiliates. We want we want CrossFit to affect more lives and change more lives. That's why we do this, right? To that point of, we did it ourselves. We became a coach and trainer. And then we wanted to increase our scope to reach more people and share this with others. And we opened up our gym. So really our purpose is directly in line with our affiliates' purpose: exposure. Exposure to new audiences, something that we can do really well with the microphone we have and the avenues we have, is reach audiences that a lot of our affiliates, and I just think about when I was running my gym, that we weren't good at. I was not good at talking to people I wasn't normally talking to. Was really good at people. No, someone walked in my gym, I'll give you everything I have, right? Like and that was my mantra. You walk in my gym, I will do everything in my power to change your life, and I will give you every inch of everything I have, because I care about you and this so much. But it's really hard to get someone that's nervous, that's scared to walk into the gym, to walk into any facility, let alone a CrossFit gym, if they're not aware of what CrossFit is. So awareness, in nerdy speak, that top of funnel piece. And I hear a lot of affiliates ask, like, marketing, marketing, marketing. I pull that back to exposure. Marketing is important, but brand exposure is important. And then from there, being able to effectively bring awareness to CrossFit, and then have that person end up walking into your gym. That's something where we are spending a lot of time and resources on, is that transition. So what does that mean? So if we're able to expose CrossFit in some way, shape, or form to a new audience, we need that person to then be able to easily find their local affiliate, reach out to the local affiliate, and then walk into the gym. And that's a journey that we're starting to build with our gym finder, our map. But it's a completely different tool now for those of you that have seen the old map to where it is now. We're just getting started there, because when we have opportunities like the CrossFit Games or the Open, when we get a lot of eyeballs, we also do some paid stuff in search to get our name up higher in front of audiences, to bolster the strength. The call to action is find a gym, right? And or learn more about CrossFit. That's really and we think about how find a gym, or if you're not sure about a gym, learn more about CrossFit, right? But even still, learn more about CrossFit always ends up walking to an affiliate. So that's really where we're spending the majority of our time and energy from a brand perspective. That's where we can help the most. And it also aligns really nicely in sort of the next step is expectation and quality, where we are spending time and resources and energy to expose CrossFit to more people and get more people in the gyms, and it's happening. But the next step is, what are the expectations we have of our affiliates, right? Of our coaches when we hand that person off. And this is something that we hear a lot. And I asked this at all the summits, and I've actually, I asked this. I was at a summit this past weekend. I was in Boston, so it was right in my backyard. We had like 250 affiliate owners and coaches. There was a big one, and asking the question of how many of you guys have heard someone having a poor experience at a CrossFit gym, and people raise their hand, or how many people are worried about the quality of a gym down the road. People raise their hand, and you know and I look at that as like, well, we have a responsibility to help make that journey better from an educational perspective, from an expectation perspective. Our affiliates and coaches also have that. We have that responsibility to continue to have a high expectation of themselves, and that's something that's really, really important. Of not only it's not just knees out, chest up, butt back, heels down. It's responding to that email right away that someone says, I'm interested, to making sure that you meet them where they are. Um, my hypothesis and our hypothesis from the data that we're seeing is a lot of gyms really struggle with that initial prospect to lead to onboarding experience, because it's outside the skill set. Again, I use myself, like that was not something I was well versed on, is this notion of lead management and making sure I took care of prospects, and the intricacies of that. Many of us also were the beneficiaries of if you build it, they will come type of thing, where people would walk in and the willing would walk in the door. But how many people are on the periphery, and that you're not aware of? How many people have we missed because our time to response isn't something what they expect? As we reach new audiences, that's something that their expectations are very high from that perspective, because that's the day and age we're in. So that's where we want to spend a lot of our time on, is because that's where we can see a lot of impact on quality and brand perception, right? What are we doing about quality? I hear, what are we doing to combat that CrossFit is dangerous, or that type of stuff? A lot of that has to do with new audiences, not existing. You walk into any affiliate, 150 members, every one of them say they love their coach and they love their gym, right? So, I mean, very rare, so we extrapolate that out of the 2.5 million people doing CrossFit in our affiliates, right? Almost all of them are basically saying, I'm having a great experience, right? What does that mean? It's those that are coming in that maybe have their first experience that's not great for whatever reason, and then they leave and they don't have the opportunity. And so based off that math, we're seeing 2 or 3 times that amount of people that come in and don't stay. And then they tell their friend, I didn't have a good experience, so I didn't stay. Right. And there's a lot of underlying factors how we can get that better. But when we think through that, that's really where I think that when we think about impact, that's where we have a lot of opportunity to really make a massive impact, um, on education, on awareness and support for one another, expectation. And that's the beauty of where we are as an ecosystem as well. It's a mature ecosystem. We have but we also, when we think about opportunity for us as our affiliates, I think again, as a small business owner, and I go back to what Greg said, just, how do you judge an affiliate, right? How do you judge a gym? How well your people air squat and how clean your bathrooms are, right? And pull that out a little deeper. Why? Well, how well your people air squat means you master the fundamentals, you limit your scope, and you know what you don't know, right? It's a fool's errand to teach the snatch before the overhead squat, before the air squat, right? These are things that Greg had always said, and that's really, really important. And then if your bathrooms are clean, and I look at that as how good are your operations? Do you and the details matter, right? And that's not the sexy stuff, and it's not the stuff you sign up for either, right? Like I'm going to open up an affiliate and I'm going to just be the best bathroom cleaner in the world.
Yeah,
But
I think one thing that, like, hit me hard at the gathering was, or the summit, was it's about how much you care,
mm,
and that your customers know you care. That's where the clean bathrooms come in, right? It's
mm,
not that you're a great bathroom cleaner, it's that you care enough to keep it clean for your people. And that I
yeah,
think we overcomplicate things. When CrossFit started, it was this simple thing about develop the fundamentals, grow intensity, and then move on. We have forgotten about that. We are not
mm,
we're looking for, like, the fancy marketing, the fancy advertising, instead of getting back to our roots and just loving on the people that are inside our walls, and they're gonna share the experience with others.
I love that, and I agree. Care, that underlying aspect of care, and it's funny you say that because it's that's the most important attribute. And I I also truly believe that every single one of our affiliates and coaches care. I will say this as a controversial take: caring's not enough. You can't just care without action. Care needs to lead to action. So what does that mean? If you care about your people, like you said, and you want to actually improve their lives, to give them everything you have, that needs to be the impetus to you continue your education. So when someone says, why should I get my level 3? It's because you care. Because you realize that that's going to make you better, give you the opportunity to make you better, to then give you the opportunity to deliver a better product. And that is because you care, right? Why clean your bathrooms? Because you care about the experience that your members have. Why should you create systems and operations to handle, your leads that hit your website, and then make sure that you respond within a minute of getting that email, and then have a human respond within under 12 hours? Because you've cared enough to learn how important that is to the initial customer experience, and that actually improves acquisition by 80 or 90%. And because you care, you do that because you want them in your gym. So I and that foundation of care is so important. And as you said, it's easy to lose sight of that because sometimes we start to major in the minors. We start to uh, think about these other things that, and oftentimes it's because of we think about when you're struggling. If things are hard, you start to think about things that you start to chase just revenue, money, right? As opposed to understanding what's going to get you there. And so you start to lose sight of actually the foundations and what we're trying to do. So, and I think that does root into our gym owners that are struggling. If you struggle, things get really challenging, and that's not just in CrossFit, but that's in life. And I think that that's also where, for us, we really want to help our affiliate owners. What can we do to help elevate the efficacy of a business, to give more opportunity, to pull their head above water a little more, to give more time and opportunity to invest? Because it does take time, right? It takes time to learn. It takes time to do these new things, and it's harder to run a business now than it ever has too, right? And we all know that it is harder to run a CrossFit affiliate today than it was 10 years ago. It's that is the you know that's the beauty and the bane of growth and of fitness in general. Many other fitness entities have spurred from the ethos of CrossFit. More people, which makes life a little harder. It's harder to get space. It's harder to find a place to have a gym. And so it's these are things that they're not insurmountable, but we want to also recognize how do we support and help as we evolve, just like in fitness, right? It we have, in order to garner adaptation 10 years in of doing CrossFit, we just have to be better coaches, right? A 10-year veteran athlete requires a better coach to identify those smaller form faults, those areas of improvement than a beginner athlete. Beginner athlete, you just say knees out, chest up, changes their life, right? 10 years in, it might just be move your hands a little wider on that pull up, right? Point your elbows here instead of here on this movement. Those smaller tweaks could yield, again, smaller results and they add up. Same thing when it comes to running a business.
So I think in these times, and this will be my last question, is CrossFit has to ride a fine line. And there was an affiliate owner who asked the question at the summit that said, or made a request, don't implement things to prevent people from sucking, so that then prevent me from being great.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They're an affiliate because they don't want to be a franchise. They want to have some say in how they run their business. And they want to make sure that we don't swing the pendulum too far to the people who suck and then prevent people from being great.
That's right.
So how do you ride that line in a time and age where bad news travels way faster than it ever did before?
Great question, and I will equate this, nerdily to just a CrossFit class, because it's the same question. I have a class of 10 athletes, one beginner, 10-year veteran. If I cater that class to the beginner, I will not make that advanced athlete better, right? That's why it's so challenging to coach a group of 10 athletes of mixed ability. That's why we have to become better, right? If I had 10 beginner athletes or 10 advanced athletes, much easier to coach. We have an ecosystem of 10-year affiliates, 1-year-old affiliates, gyms that make over $1 million, and gyms that lose money, and everything in between. When we think about what our goals are, they're aligned. One, we're not going to, like you said, we're not going to force you to do things, right? Because that's not who we are. We're not a franchise. We're an affiliate system. But there's also expectation, which we've always had, right? Expectation is very important. And then and responsibility. And for us, we are going to invest more than we ever have for growth, because we know that this is that's the opportunity that we have. With that growth comes expectation of quality and responsibility, right? And then from there, if there's experiences that are happening that we don't want to see, we should be able to be aware of that and give opportunity to make better. It's not, and because that's the age-old fact. We are better together. The cream will rise to the top, as Greg always said. If you're not delivering an excellent product, you're going to fail, right? That's that egalitarian, that concept. Now, what we all would probably have liked and would like today is, hey, here's a bunch of things that work. And it's proven by a bunch of these other gyms. Would you like that? Yeah. Right? Those are things that we can provide because we have such a vast ecosystem. We can culminate these best practices that are proven and then be able to share that with our affiliates. And that's something that is really, really important and we're passionate about. But we can't force you to do it, or and nor do we want to, right? Because you need that underlying notion of care. If you handed me, say, hey, here's a website that's proven to work, you don't have to do anything, I would have gladly said yes. I don't want to make a website, right? But the importance of it. And the nice thing is that almost all of our affiliates are the same way. It's like, I didn't get into this to do 90% of the stuff I have to do. Really, I want to coach, change lives. How do we kind of thread that needle? So that's exactly where we're spending our time, and we can't do it all, nor do we want to, right? That's another thing. So yeah, great question.
So Jeffrey Birchfield, who is a school teacher, says age-old problem that we see in schools. How do you differentiate?
How do you differentiate athletes or students or like efficacy of like schools or affiliates? I'm not sure.
I think he's just agreeing with you, saying that they deal with that in the schools where you have overachievers and underachievers, and you've got to teach the entire class, right?
It's and again, and this is where it comes down to is like the best coaches, the best teachers are able to do that so well, right? Like that's like I mean, you all remember a good teacher from your life. They educated, they inspired, and they entertained the whole class, right? That is the separator, and it's very hard, no doubt. And that it's a true master of their craft that can do that. It's hard, and and that's why like there's a lot of things that can make your life easier or harder in to deliver that product with a group of diverse abilities and capabilities.
So there's one more comment I want to address, and then if you want growth, bring back media. Period. And your story alone is, every second counts. Sucked you into the CrossFit realm. I know media brought me in. Um, yeah, are there any plans to do more media from CrossFit about what it does and how effective it is?
Yeah, I don't have a lot of time, because I know, but I'll answer this one, and then and I think the short answer is media has shifted and changed a lot within our ecosystem and space in general. We are we are spending a lot of time and now being more collaborative than ever. Obviously, a lot of change since the 2015, 16, 17 timeframe to where we are now. And the big thing that we're spending time on is where do we want to spend our time and energy on media to reach and show that CrossFit is different. We spent a lot of time and worked with a lot of people of, what we're really good at is telling stories to ourselves. Really good at that. And all the amazing things that happen inside our affiliate. All of those amazing things. And but the challenge is how do we raise the eyebrow of those that are not in our affiliate? What resonates with them? And you know, it's and so how do we target that audience and spend time to get them to then be interested in the life-changing things that every one of our affiliates do. And that's and it's a fine line because for some people that's often not the reason why they're looking for a CrossFit gym, right? They find out that purpose as they go in, right? They find out that they walk into a gym and they're like, this is different. So how do we get that eyebrow of like this is something that's really special? Um, and then have that opportunity. So that's something that we're spending a lot of time on. We did the Magic of CrossFit earlier in the year, which is really good. And as we shift, and then if you some of the stories that we had throughout the open and the games were really good to highlight that. Now we're spending the time on of how do we reach this a group of people that we call the willing, right? That want to do something new, that are willing to engage and do that work because that's what's so special about the affiliates. And that's something that is that's where we're spending time on. So and I do have to jump because I'm a little late, but there there are things that take time, and so like with the Tyson thing, I see that on there. You know, it's w- be on the lookout for some fun stuff. Like with Tyson and whatnot coming down the pipeline. So it's not lost on us, yeah, and yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Austin. I apologize for running over a little bit. If you are an affiliate owner, there are tools out on the website. Go to CrossFit.com. There is what's included, and it's an affiliate starter kit, owner roundtables, programming, playbook, marketing kit, and all that is linked in Austin's Instagram as well through his link tree. Check all that stuff out there. Thank you, Austin, for being with us today.
Awesome.
We appreciate you. And again, I apologize for running over. We'll
Oh
talk to
no,
you.
I could do this all day. So I appreciate you and I appreciate everyone kind of chiming in.
All right. Thanks, Austin. We'll talk soon.
Okay. Okay.
Bye.